Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, chapter 1, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, text 24, translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-yoga Swami Prabhupada. Now the verse is prose, so I'll just read that. There's Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, who had asked him about Maharaj Priyavrata. We'll see why and what question. So he continues to speak about this special soul. Atacha duhitarang rajapatir vishvakarmana upayeme barhishmatim namatasyam uhavaba atmajan atmasamana shila guna karma rupa viryodaran dasha bhavayam bahuva kanyam cha yaviyasim urjavatim nama. Ata thereafter. Cha also. Duhitaram, the daughter. Prajapate, of one of the Prajapatis, entrusted with increasing population. Vishvakarmanaha, named Vishvakarma. Upayeme, married. Barhishmatim, Bahishmati. Nama, named. Tasyam, in her. Upa, as it is celebrated. Vava, wonderful. Atmajan, sons. Atma samana, exactly equal to him. Shila, character. Guna, quality. Karma, activities. Rupa, beauty. Virya, prowess. Udaram, whose magnanimity. Dasha, 10. Bhavayam Bapuva, he begot. Kanyam, daughter. Cha, also. Yavi Yasim, the youngest of all. Urjasvatim, Urjasvati. Nama, named. Thereafter, Maharaj Parikshit married Barhishmati, the daughter of the Prajapati named Vishvakarma. In her, he begot 10 sons, equal to him in beauty, character, magnanimity, and other qualities. He also begot a daughter, the youngest of all, named Urjasvati. Purport. Maharaj Priyavrata not only carried out the order of Lord Brahma by accepting the duties of government, but he also married Barhishmati, the daughter of Vishvakarma, one of the Prajapatis. Since Maharaj Priyavrata was fully trained in transcendental knowledge, he could have returned home and conducted the business of government as a brahmachari. Instead, however, when he returned to household life, he accepted a wife also. The principle is that when one becomes a grihastha, he must live perfectly in that order, which means he must live peacefully with a wife and children. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's first wife died, his mother requested him to marry for a second time. He was 20 years old and he was going to take sannyas at the age of 24. Yet, by the request of his mother, he married. As long as I am in household life, he told his mother, I must have a wife, for household life does not mean staying in a house. Real household life means living in a house with a wife. 3 words in this verse are very significant. U, ha, bhava. These words are used to express wonder. Priyavrata Maharaj had taken a vow of renunciation, but accepting a wife and begetting children have nothing to do with the path of renunciation. These are the activities on the path of enjoyment. It was a source of great wonder, therefore, that Priyavrata Maharaj, who had followed the path of renunciation, had now accepted the path of enjoyment. Turn them all off, or put them in flight mode. We are flying towards the transcendental realm. Prabhupada continues, sometimes I am criticized. Yes, he was criticized. Because, although I am a sannyasi, I have taken part in the marriage ceremonies of my disciples. Well, he only did until 1970. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it. It must be explained, however, that since we have started a Krishna-conscious society, and since a human society must also have ideal marriages, to correctly establish an ideal society, we must take part in marrying some of its members, although we have taken to the path of renunciation. This may be astonishing to persons who are not very interested in establishing Daiva Varnashrama, the transcendental system of 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, however, wanted to re-establish Daiva Varnashrama. In Daiva Varnashrama, there cannot be acknowledgement of social status according to birthright, because in Bhagavad Gita it is said that the determining considerations are guna and karma, one's qualities and work. It is this Daiva Varnashrama that should be established all over the world to continue a perfect society for Krishna consciousness. This may be astonishing to foolish critics, but it is one of the functions of a Krishna-conscious society. So we can read the verse again. For you probably understand all of it. Atacha duhitarang prajapater vishvakarmana upayeme varishmatim nama tasyam uha vava atmajan atma samana shila guna karma rupa viryodaran dasha bhavayam bahuva kanyam cha yaviyasim urjavastim nama. Thereafter, Maharaj Priyavrata married Barhishmati, the daughter of the Prajapati named Vishwakarma. In her he begot 10 sons equal to him in beauty, character, magnanimity, and other qualities. He also begot a daughter, the youngest of all, named Urjasvati. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Srigurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Ishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakaramayam Dalati Swapadantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopeshna Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shavanu Sudevi Pranamami Harive Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyevacha Pakithanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama So let us go to the beginning of the chapter. Prabhupada talks a lot about how this situation was quite special. Because Parikshit Maharaj, he was a little confused. He said, why did King Priyavrata, who was a great self-realized devotee of the Lord, remain in household life, which is the root cause of the bondage of karma, fruitive activity, and which defeats the mission of human life. Devotees are certainly liberated persons, therefore, O greatest of the Brahmanas, they cannot possibly be absorbed in family affairs. Their consciousness cannot possibly become attached to family members. This is my great doubt. He had a doubt. How was it possible for a person like King Priyavrata, who was now so attached to wife, children, and home, achieve the topmost infallible perfection in Krishna consciousness? How is it possible? Cannot be. And the first thing, and Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita also, when Arjuna sometimes expresses a doubt, he said, yes, you're right, but. So he also says, yes, what you have said is correct. But at the same time, and in this verse, of course, he says something special, actually. He says, even though sometimes a person may be checked by some impediment, because his mind is attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, he never gives up the exalted position he has acquired. So let's see. As we know, King Priyavrata, he is another of Narada Muni's disciples. Narada Muni has a lot of disciples. And as in this case also, when he instructs his disciples, they generally become brahmacharis. Yes. We have heard about the sons of Daksha, who was so upset that he cursed Narada Muni. And then he just begot a lot of daughters. So Narada Muni didn't preach to them to make them brahmacharinis. Anyway, so King Priyavrata, he was advanced in knowledge and in renunciation. So now it happened that his father asked him to become the ruler of the world. And he said, no. So then Swayambhuva Manu very intelligently asked his father, Rama, to intervene and Brahma is coming, and he speaks, and who can say no to Brahma except for the four Kumaras? So, as a result, that's all described previously, when Brahma comes and he asks Priyavrata to accept this duty, he says, and he doesn't resent a very important part of that instruction, that he immediately accepts this instruction, and at the same time, he will not lose his position. So this is now the description here. He marries Barishmati, not ordinary girl, the daughter of Vishwakarma, another Prajapati, all very highly elevated souls. And then he has 10 sons and 1 daughter. So Prabhupada's point, first point, simple point, is Grihastha means to live in not just to live in a house, but to live in a house with a family. Otherwise, one is not really a Grihastha. And he even gives the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When his first wife died, he was requested to marry again, and he immediately accepted, and he even gave the reason that as long as I am in household life, I must have a wife, otherwise what's the meaning? So that's true. Now the wonder is, which is expressed in this verse, Uha Baba, that there seems to be a contradiction. That Priyavrata had taken a vow of renunciation, but accepting a wife and begetting children is just the opposite. It's the path of enjoyment. So the source of wonder is this: how is it that Priyavrata, who had followed the path of renunciation, now accepts the path of enjoyment? And Prabhupada gives his own example that he, although a sannyasi, he accepted the position even of a marriage matchmaker, not just taking part in the ceremony. In the very beginning, he selected the wives and husbands and made the arrangements. And said he only did this until 1970 for a reason. It was unfortunately not very successful in the sense that they didn't stay together. It's America, Kali-yoga. So it's not India with a very strong family tradition, or even some European, especially Catholic countries, where even as practically recently, I'm not sure now, I think the Catholic Church divorce is not an option. It's not allowed. So, and Prabhupada said it a few times in the beginning that now this is for the whole life, there's no divorce. And he started 68, 67 actually, very early. And then a few years later, only 3 years later, there were so many cases of these marriages not being together anymore because, for whatever reason. So then he was actually disgusted and he stopped being involved with any marriage. He said, I don't want anything to do with it. If they want to do it, they do it on their own risk, on their own responsibility. So, but still, actually this is later, so it's interesting. As a principle, Srila Prabhupada still mentions this. Fifth canto means at least 74, maybe even 75, and at least 74, when this was written. So that means a few years later, after he already had said he wanted not have anything to do with it. Still, as a principle, he explains that, he said, it must be explained that since we have started a Krishna-conscious society, and since a human society must also have ideal marriages, to correctly establish an ideal society, we must take part in marrying some of its members. although we have taken to the path of renunciation. And then he refers to his own spiritual master, who had the desire to re-establish Daiva Varnashram. Now the last part, again, is embarrassing for us, especially my generation, because we haven't done this. And we will see whether anybody will do it. It is this Daiva Varnashram that should be established all over the world to continue a perfect society for Krishna consciousness. So, if there's no Daiva Varnashram, how can it become a perfect society of Krishna consciousness? Very difficult. And this may be astonishing, even to foolish critics within the Krishna consciousness movement. There are, who don't even want to hear the word Varnashram. But it is one of the functions of a Krishna conscious society. So we have Prabhupada's words right here. So to reject those words is not very good, but it happens. And we may think it's not possible. So even if it's maybe not possible immediately, especially on a global scale, still it should be started wherever it's possible, in a small scale. If we never really started in any scale, then how can it ever become a big scale? But obviously this is really needed in order to include everybody in elevation to Krishna consciousness. Just yesterday, actually, I read, I think it was in here, part one of Prabhupada's purports, where he said that in a Varnashram society, we have these four Varnas: Shudras, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas. And all of them are supposed to become perfect in their life by becoming Krishna conscious. It's not that only the Brahmanas become perfect and everybody else stays on some whatever level. No, everybody, if they all follow their duties and follow the direction of the head, yes, that's the Brahmanas. But then everybody, even the Shudras, are elevated to Krishna consciousness. So that's the vision, the grand scheme of not just only a few selected, chosen people. One may say, just the brahmacharis become Krishna conscious, everybody else goes to hell. And some people even think like, we thought maybe, some may still think like that. Everybody else is in Maya. No, the idea is that everybody, because, and this is one example, yes, in the beginning of life, naturally, one is unmarried, so you may be called a brahmachari. Maybe just a bachelor would be more honest. That's another subject matter. If you're not married, that doesn't mean you're necessarily a brahmachari. So be honest. If you're not a brahmachari, even though you're not married, don't put on saffron. That's an offense. So they're still on, right? Anyway, so in this case, Maharaj Priyavrata, he was fully trained. And still, in this case, on higher order, he accepted this apparently different path, which is another point now. Is apparently, therefore, the wonder, how is it possible that he is acting in a way which seems to be incompatible, right? How can he be renounced and at the same time have a family? That seems to be completely contradictory. And it is actually not. One of our greatest examples is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who had a big family, not just a small family. Something like this here, 10 children and a daughter, 10 boys and a daughter, big family. Still, if we heard about his schedule, his daily schedule, always engaged in Krishna's service. Bodily necessities, very minimal, just like Prabhupada also gave that example, sleeping minimum hours, getting up at night when nobody was disturbing to write books. So, and he wrote about 100 and about 300 songs. So how can you do that if you are absorbed in the path of enjoyment? It's not possible. So that it is possible to do both things. And actually, Shukadeva Goswami, I think he explains this somewhere. And this question came up in another context also, or actually maybe Prabhupada speaks about it in one of the purports. The point is that one may ask or wonder, how can one be in household life? Are there any householders here that I don't see practically any? Are there any? There's one, two householder. How many children? Two, very little. That's better. I had 4, so 5 is good. 6 is better. Then 12, 24, like that. Anyway, the question is this: how can you simultaneously live both lives? How can one maintain one's consciousness focused on Krishna and at the same time fulfill his duties? Not be like that also happened. Those who entered household life, devotees, then they realized that this is not an easy life. Then they thought, I have to give it up because it's Maya. And then they may already had a few children, so then you become irresponsible. And Prabhupada, of course, did not allow this. At least he said, you cannot do this. This is irresponsible. Now you have taken this path. You have taken a wife. You have children. Now you have to stick it out until the very end. Very end means your daughters have all to be married. Otherwise, you cannot. Your responsibilities are not fulfilled. So the question is this: how can one do this? So the essence of the instruction is that one will fulfill his duty. One will take care of the family members with affection, and at the same time be detached. That's an art. But yes, one will fulfill his duty, and but at the same time, there's no real attachment. So I'm just looking whether I find this somewhere. I think I read it. I'm not sure whether it was here. But definitely Srila Prabhupada explained it like this, that it's an art to do both things at the same time, to fulfill one's duty and all the family members are happy, and one is a loving father and husband and all that. And at the same time, the heart is not overwhelmed by mundane affection, which is the cause of all kinds of illusions. So, that's the art. And Priyavrata Maharaj, he definitely is in that category. He is qualified. Therefore, Brahma, he could ask him to do this kind of duty. And there are other devotees who were in a similar position. Like even Prahlad Maharaj, he wasn't much inclined at all to become the king of the world, the king of the demons. But when Nrsimhadev asked him, and then also Brahma came to coronate him, he accepted this duty. But at the same time, he remained detached. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, he asked that similar question to Narada Muni. How is it possible? Because he heard about the perfect person who's detached, just lying on the ground and, depending on whatever comes. So then he also has this doubt. How we, who are living in the household life, how can we come to that kind of perfection? Because we are surrounded by so many, as a king, opulences and so many persons we have a relationship with. So the instruction was that very same instruction, that yes, to show affection, you take care, but in your heart you will remain detached. So that's the art of living in the material world, just like the lotus flower as it is described, that maybe looking, it's in the water, but it's never touched by the water. So the transcendentalist, he can move in the material world and at the same time not be affected. But it's an art, because at any time you may become affected if you're not careful. So, okay, I think that's the basic idea. Comments or questions? Those who are contemplating household life may have a question. Or maybe not. They're all Naishtika brahmacharis. Not real. They're all laughing. That means no. Yes. Mike, you need this one? Or do you have another one? It's good. Otherwise, I don't. Maybe this is long enough. You can do that. Because it may take a long time to come. So in the meantime, this is faster. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Yes.
Maharaj. One point is there that Maharaj Privrat married. Prabhupada makes the point that he could remain brahmachari in household life and he could maintain the kingdom, but he married. And now we see in Bhishmadev case. Bhishmadev case, he was living in the house and he did not marry because he had some reason. The father of Satyavati, he made the condition that the son of Satyavati will rule the kingdom. You cannot rule the kingdom. Visudev agreed. Okay, I will not rule the kingdom. Then he said that your sons will snatch the kingdom from the sons of Satyavati. Then he said, okay, he will not marry. And still he was remaining in the palace and he was maintaining and he was protecting the kingdom and the throne. Whoever sits on the throne, he will protect and he will maintain the kingdom, he will serve everything, he will do service and he will remain. So this was the point that he did not marry.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Oh, we have to go to the other. I have to run. You're young, you can run. No, it has to go to the other side.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your presentation. Maharaj, I'd like to know, is there any evidence in Iskcon or any cases in Iskcon where the spiritual master has instructed the brahmachari disciple to get married, especially that particular brahmachari is in a good spiritual position?
Whether there are any cases?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never done that, so. I mean, that must be a very extraordinary situation. Like in this case, there's a need. We need somebody to rule the world, or even is it the universe? I think maybe you has to rule the universe, right? But that's a big job. Not anybody can do. And maybe Priyavrata may have said, "Why me? Get somebody else to do that." So, but if there's nobody else, then sometimes, well, there may be a need. Unless there's a real need, why this request should come. But we have this, you could say, well, it's an instruction. Do the needful. I mean, for Krishna, that's right. We should be ready to do whatever is necessary. Because if we are attached to a certain way of life, that means it's for me. And Krishna's cause is like on the second level. So, as what was pointed out, for Priyavrata there was not really a difference. Or as Prabhupada said, he could have remained a brahmachari and ruled as a brahmachari. But, then this reason came, then I also have to accept a wife, and the whole whatever comes with it. But at least in the case of these great personalities, in one sense one can say, doesn't matter how or where they are situated, the consciousness will not be affected. So if that is the case, then anybody can take any position. But generally, the instruction is just be careful, don't associate, with the opposite sex unnecessarily, and maintain the position. That's the other side. And we all know this, you all know this. You're probably all trained like that, hopefully. So, but still, and that Prabhupada many times says, generally, the training for the brahmachari is to remain a brahmachari. That's the training. And then when they come to the age of 25, more or less, like, the idea of 100 years, 25. So then there's an option. So those who cannot remain because there are these desires, then they are allowed. But if possible, the recommendation is you remain. And, so unless there's a need, like in the case of becoming if you have to become the ruler of the universe, then you may have to be married. And if not, then, or maybe somebody will say, you have to become the temple president. And temple presidents generally should be married. Generally, not all of them. Anyway, you got the idea.
Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Swami Thakur said that I am ready to beget 100 sons.
Yes.
If I make sure that they will be Krishna conscious.
That's right. So, whatever is necessary, you can do. But you don't have to have 100 wives. Well, maybe, because what wife can beget 100 sons? That's always 4 at a time, 25 times. Well, anyway, we don't want to speculate. Anything else?
Prabhupada also said that I renounced my wife and children. So Krishna gave me so many sons without the trouble of wife.
That's definitely true. So it's not in itself, nobody can say it's bad. Sometimes the challenge was, well, if everybody becomes a brahmachari, how the world will go on? Of course, Prabhupada said, don't worry, it will never happen. So in the meantime, the mic has to go over there. So yes, in one sense, we may say it doesn't really matter. Whatever position one may have, you can practice Krishna consciousness.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, very grateful for the complete adherence to Prabhupada purports in Indonesia. Thank you very much. My question, Maharaj, is that here Srila Prabhupada mentions about how as a sannyasi, he had to, for the establishment of the society and Deva Varnashram, take part and arrange matches and ensure marriage ceremonies. Now, going forward now, for many of us who are in Brahmacharya ashram but who are preaching, what is the principle to be followed if, say, somebody in connection to the movement is getting married? Should we attend it? To what extent we should attend it? And what should be our participation levels in it? Say, for example, one of my friends is going to enter Grihastha ashram very soon. He used to be Brahmacharya ashram, now he's entering Grihastha ashram. And because we're very close friends, I have a desire to attend his marriage ceremony. Yet at the same time, I don't know what is the principle to be followed for a temple brahmachari. Are we allowed to attend these kind of functions? What should be the principle?
Normally we shouldn't, we don't, brahmacharis don't have a business to attend marriage ceremonies. Anyway, I think it's common sense. And then, well, we may think about it. If, for example, and we have seen this, at least in my days, we all were very young. And of course brought up in Western society. So then if you see, like a brahmachari likes to play with small children, or, take small children and, have some exchange with them, then you may think, do you want to get married? Are Are you sure you want to? Because that's not, the business of a brahmachari. It doesn't do that. That's not exactly like that, right? Or maybe if there are preachers, now we get some gray areas, and they always like to go to preach to all the ladies. I mean, we have people like that. I'm not saying where. In some temples we have observed. Whenever some young, attractive female visitors come, one or certain persons immediately go to preach. So then, as I said, be honest. If there's an attraction and it's not just by accident or it's there continuously. The person is thinking about it, then just put yourself into the right position. Otherwise, it's a strange, brahmachari always with some kids, just playing with kids and talking to the ladies, and that it doesn't give a good image of brahmachari, I think. What to speak of sannyasis? They may do that. Yes, we have. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. So, anything else? Something less polemic. I mean, whenever it comes to grihastas and children and brahmachari, then but nowadays it's much more civic. It's more like matured. You cannot imagine in the early days how it was. We were all your age and all stupid. So if somebody got married amongst you, it's like the world collapsed and this person goes to hell and he becomes useless. Nobody will talk to him and he's ostracized from anyway. So crazy. Anyway, you won't believe it.
My point is, if I get some invitation for marriage ceremony, then I make the condition. I will come in the marriage ceremony.
Well, it depends. Yes, if there's some obligation social, then you may have to do that.
Well, only for that time, everybody stop their activities and listen. And I will give you message. This is my condition.
Okay.
Listen, all activities should be stopped.
Okay.
Only for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. I will give the message and I will go.
You will give the message. Why are you getting married? Did you really think about it profoundly? You have a good reason or just some sentiment, which is useless? Anyway.
The message is Griho Thako, Bane Thako,
That is actually the right message, and I should have mentioned it actually, because that comes in one of the purports. Prabhupada says that. Our philosophy, and therefore I was mentioning our stupidity in the very early days, so fanatical, that as soon as a brahmachari becomes married, he was like somebody who, it's like in the army, somebody deserted and was not considered anymore part of the, like in good standing, practically speaking. So I think we should have matured and have taken this instruction, Grihetaka, Vanataka, Agauranga Bodhidako. And Narottam Das Thakur said, if you are chanting Gauranga and you are Krishna conscious, doesn't matter who you are, where you are situated, I want your company. That's the criteria. If you are Krishna conscious, doesn't matter what kind of color you are wearing, and that's the fact. Because, and that's another point of history, we have seen, and I mean nowadays there are so many of those who are apparently sannyasis or some saints, mahants, and they're completely debauched and rascals, and those who do have a family, they may be very noble and very serious and advanced devotees. So the outward appearance can also be just a show. You have the fake renunciates. They give a bad name when they're detected. They're looking like, oh, he's a renunciate, but actually secretly he's doing this and this and this. And the other person, very on, yes, this is my family, but he's completely engaged in Krishna consciousness. So let's end on a good note. It's the consciousness, it's not the externals, that's for sure. So therefore, again, if you're not really a brahmachari, don't dress in saffron. Hare Krishna. Nowadays they dress in any color. That's a new thing. You've seen this? You have blue dhotis, green dhotis, pink, black dhotis. I mean, that's the. This is. It's Kali Yuga is creeping in. I mean, I was thinking about it. If this would have happened in our days, in the beginning, somebody would come with a black kurta. Would have been, or even black bead bag. I mean, what's everything is a message. And the way you dress, if you dress blue jeans and t-shirt or whatever, it's a message. If you're dressing in a suit with a tie, and it's a message. So if you're wearing black, it's a message, isn't it? Maybe you're inclined to Gothic rock or whatever. I don't know. You can come to Germany. Leipzig is the world capital of Goth movement. Probably you don't know what it is. I don't want to tell you. It's black. Everything is black. The candles, they sleep in coffins. The walls of the house are painted black. The candles are black. The dress is black. I don't know what is not black. So if now devotees start to have black kurta and black dhoti and black bead bag, is that the sign of advancement? I don't know. So how did we get there? Yes, that the outward dress is not indication necessarily of our consciousness, but in many ways it reflects, what we think and how we feel. Anyway, time to stop. Thank you again. This year was very nice to be here. If Krishna desires, by your mercy, we'll be coming back within 1 year, not earlier. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sisi Gaurnitai, Sisi Radha Parthasarthi Vishakha, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Gauravakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.